All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for participating in our public workshop today on the 2022 Air Monitoring Network Plan. We're going to go ahead and get the workshop started this afternoon, but before we start, I wanted to read a few instructions here for those of you who are participating on Zoom. So we do have staff members participating in person and via Zoom video teleconference. We will do our best to facilitate a smooth meeting with public participation via Zoom video and audio teleconference. Before we begin, I want to review some important guidelines and general instructions for the meeting. Please silence your cell and desk phones. This will ensure that we do not hear any feedback that can interrupt the meeting. Only district staff will be visible via Zoom. Members of the public are asked to unmute themselves when they are recognized to make a public comment. After the presentation, staff will announce the public comment period has opened, and staff will recognize any public attendee who has indicated they wish to speak. On the Zoom video application, please press the raise hand button on the bottom of your screen so that you may be recognized to speak, and be sure to unmute yourself. If you are participating by Zoom phone conference, please press *9 to raise your hand so that you may be recognized to speak. Staff will call the last 4 digits of your phone number when it is your turn to speak. Be sure to press *6 to unmute and mute yourself. Written comments may be sent to webcast@valyair.org email address. The mailbox will be monitored during the workshop, and comments received will be read aloud by staff during the public comment period. So if we can go ahead and call up the presentation, we'll get it started this afternoon. Just wanted to introduce myself first. I'm John Klassen, Director of Air Quality Science, and I'm joined by Robert Gillis, Air Quality Analysis and Research Supervisor, Madison Perkins, Senior Air Quality Specialist, and Allie Adams, Manager from the California Air Resources Board. We will be presenting this workshop today, an overview of our 2022 Air Monitoring Network Plan that is out for public review currently. Just to give you a high-level overview of what we'll be discussing this afternoon, we will be talking about the district's core values and how those are exhibited in the Air Monitoring Network and the work that we do to collect data across the Valley. We'll be given an overview of the network itself in the San Joaquin Valley, where the sites operate, the types of equipment that are operated there, then talk a bit about the air monitoring siting requirements that we have to consider and be careful with when we're establishing new air monitoring sites or moving an air monitoring site, and then give you an overview of the document itself, the 2022 Air Monitoring Network Plan, give you a scope of what's in there, what are the elements and requirements. Then we'll bring it back for any comments and questions that you might have. So at this point, I'm going to pass it over to Robert to continue with the presentation.
Thank you, John. Hello, everyone. So yeah, I'll just start off with a few next slides here on some overall details on the air monitoring network within the San Joaquin Valley. On this slide, just a few of the points here. The air monitoring network is operated to represent the unique air quality conditions in the San Joaquin Valley, and it is a reflection of the district's core values. Air monitoring data that is collected with the air monitoring sites and the instruments does contribute to air quality and health improvements for Valley residents, and the district works very hard to maintain the data availability, allowing the public to make informed decisions to protect their health. The data also supports the district's planning and air pollution control efforts for the Valley. And the district also is continually evaluating new air monitoring equipment, looking for innovative and improved ways to monitor the air quality in the Valley throughout the entire San Joaquin Valley. And when new equipment is obtained, it is done to help with meeting all of the goals, and the goals that are on the slide here. And then the district uses the funds efficiently and even applies for federal grants when they're available. The data from the air monitoring network is collected and reviewed, and it contributes to tracking continual improvements of the air quality in the Valley. So on this slide, we just have a list showing that the San Joaquin Valley is designated as an attainment area for a number of the federal national ambient air quality standards, including lead, nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide, carbon monoxide, PM10, 1 hour ozone, and then most recently, the 65 microgram PM2.5 standard for the 24-hour national standard. And then additionally, the district has been tracking progress towards attainment of the 1997 annual PM 2.5 standard, which is a 15 micrograms per cubic meter standard. And then also the 1997 standard for 8-hour ozone, which is 84 ppb. That's parts per billion. And we're working right now on some clean data determinations for those two standards using the data collected from the air monitoring network to evaluate potential attainment for those standards. So within the San Joaquin Valley, the San Joaquin Valley Air District and CARB both invest significant resources and effort into operating and maintaining the extensive air monitoring network in all 8 counties of the valley. So the district does operate the network in a partnership with CARB. So the CARB serves as an oversight agency. It's the Primary Quality Assurance Organization is the title for that. And they help to ensure compliance with state and federal requirements in the air monitoring network in the San Joaquin Valley. There are a lot of sites in the valley. There's 37 total, and each site measures different pollutants and ranging in all different 8 counties, and with the goal of providing timely information to the public on the air quality. The sites in the air monitoring district, the air monitoring network, do follow strict federal guidelines for regularly scheduled maintenance, calibrations, and certifications. And then also the air monitoring sites in the network undergo regular independent audits, both from CARB and the US EPA. The district staff that operate the district sites, and then also all operators of the sites from other agencies, undergo extensive training to be able to maintain and operate and calibrate the air monitoring instruments. And then efforts that are put into the network ensure that the data that is collected is of high quality and that it's defensible when it's compared against the federal air quality standards. This map here is just a direct map that's shown, pulled from the air monitoring network plan that we're here to discuss today. And it shows in detail the locations of the each air monitoring site within the San Joaquin Valley. So again, this is all 8 counties in the San Joaquin Valley Air Basin. And just as an overview, this is available in the network plan document, and it shows which different pollutants are measured at each of the air monitoring sites within the valley, and also shows which sites are sites that are owned and operated by the San Joaquin Valley Air District, which sites are owned and operated by CARB, and then there are also a few sites that are owned and operated by the National Park Service. So this is a multi-agency effort here, and this is an area where it's kind of a concise summary of the entire network within the valley. The data that's collected through all of the air monitoring sites in the network has a wide variety of uses, and just to cover a few of them here, the real-time air quality data from the network is used in the district's real-time air advisory network tool, which is a mobile tool, or is the mobile application also available for that? It's publicly available to communicate air quality information and air quality data in real time. The data is also used to inform and develop the daily air quality forecasts for the entire valley. It's also used for critical air quality planning and regulatory actions. It informs the district and the public of any impacts when there are extreme air quality events like wildfires when they occur. And then the data is also used by other tools similar to the RAN tool, but there's the AirNow tool, which has its own mobile app. CARB has data available through its own web page on the internet, air quality information that is displayed there from our network, and their sites within the network is there. And there are also various weather apps that are available that use the same data that's collected from all of these sites in our valley. This slide just shows an example of some of the air monitoring sites, some of the equipment that's included in the sites. On the top left is just an example of what a rooftop mounted air monitoring site looks like. This is a smaller collection of equipment that's mounted on the roof. On the bottom left is an example of a full air monitoring permanent shelter that includes the capability of including more air monitoring equipment and monitoring more pollutants. So each site that's located in the district must meet very strict federal siting requirements, regardless of whether it's a district site or a CARB site or a National Parks Service site. Some of those examples of some of those strict requirements are that the site must meet distance requirements from surrounding trees or surrounding structures. The equipment inlets that are feeding into the instruments must also be placed to ensure that the capture of the ambient air quality is not restricted by anything that's surrounding it. So it's free to enter into the instrument inlet, and that must also ensure that there's an appropriate distance from any major sources of emissions that are nearby, and that data must represent the air quality on a regional basis. Some other siting considerations that go into siting an air monitoring station are that the location must be secure for the shelter and the equipment, and that access to consistent electrical power and even mobile network connectivity is available. Those are very important considerations as well. And that locations must be identified that would facilitate long-term air monitoring, and that includes approval from landowners and the process to negotiate lease agreements with the landowners and building owners. And it can be difficult, and is often difficult, to have all of these requirements satisfied in any needed area. So this is a process that must be followed to ensure that all of these are met to meet these goals. So from here, I will pass the presentation, next slide, over to Madison Perkins. And Madison, I'll advance the slides when you're ready.
Sorry, I had a hard time unmuting myself there for a second. So what our Air Monitoring Network Plan is a document that we put together every year, and it goes over a wide variety of information and details, including our federal requirements in terms of monitoring requirements and quality assurance requirements, as well as a great amount of details about our site information, including site and monitoring details, any recent implementation or any proposed changes that we might have for our monitoring or for our sites. Next slide, please. So here's just a brief summary of what some of our minimum monitoring criteria are. As you can see, we monitor quite a few different varieties of pollutants, and each one has their own unique monitoring criteria. The most common one is MSA population, or a county population, which is a criteria for almost all of the pollutants. But there are also some really unique ones, including design value concentrations, annual average daily traffic, or even our lead emissions. Next slide, please. So here's an example of what our requirements are for ozone. As you can see, there's the MSA population as well as the 3-year design value. The design value concentration is broken down by whether it is above or below that 85% concentration. If it's above the 85%, then we have to have a little bit more monitoring. If it's below the 85%, then we have to have a little bit less monitoring is required. And then it's also more monitoring based on higher populations, less monitoring based on lower populations. Within the document, we provide the MSA name, the site name, the population amount, as well as whether or not each site falls above or below that 85%. We provide the number of monitors that are required, and then we also provide the number of monitors that we have at each one of the sites, or I'm sorry, at each one in each one of the MSAs. Next slide, please. And then this is for the requirements for PM25. We also look at MSA population for this, and it's broken down in the same way, whereas higher population needs a little bit more monitoring, lower population a little bit less. What's interesting about PM25 is that we have the 24-hour standard as well as the annual standard, and that information is broken down in the document as well. And we go into a little bit more detail about at each site, whether or not it falls above or below the 85% based off of both of those standards. And once again, we provide the MSA, the site name for each site that has PM25, the number of monitors that are required, as well as the number of monitors that we have. Next slide, please. We have a lot of really good detailed site information. We're showing the Clovis site here, but we provide this information for all of the sites within the district, whether they're run by the district itself or whether it's run by CARB. There's some upper level information provided here, such as the statistical area name and the county, but then we also get some really nitty-gritty information in here as well, such as the traffic count per year and kind of what the ground cover in that area looks like. So if you're looking for any specific information on any specific sites, this is a really great place to go in order to see, really just any and all information that you could be looking for each one of our sites. Next slide, please. We also go into quite a bit of detailed information about the equipment at each one of those sites. It's broken down by site and then also by pollutant. Once again, this one is for Clovis Villa, and we can see that we have a few PM10 monitors, a PM25 monitor, as well as ozone. We provide the parameter code for each one of those, and then we also provide some really good details, such as the instrument manufacturer and model for each one of those, whether or not the ozone is considered a PAM site, what the method code is. And so once again, if you're interested in a site and you're interested in what kind of equipment we have, this is a really great resource for anybody to look and to see what kind of, great monitors that we have here at the district. Next slide, please. We've had some recent updates within the Valley, and so we are transitioning quite a few of our filter-based PM25 and PM10 monitors to real-time instruments. Some of the PM25 monitors that have already been transitioned over within the last year are the Merced M Street, Fresno Pacific, and Fresno Golden/M Street, and those were all replaced back in 2021. And then for PM10 monitors, we've replaced the Bakersfield, California back in April of 2021, and then Turlock, Merced M Street, Fresno Drummond, and once again, the Bakersfield Golden/M Street site. Those were replaced in early 2022. So a lot of our sites are going through that transition from filter-based to real-time. Next slide, please. And finally, we've had a few transitions with some of the CARB monitoring as well. Within the same MSA, we saw the Stockton Hazleton site was then transitioned over to the Stockton University Park, and Visalia Church was then transitioned over to Visalia Ashland. We are also considering some changes at the Bakersfield Airport, also known as Bakersfield Plans site. CARB and the district have or are currently evaluating some siting challenges at that property, and just the impacts and the significant activities that are happening at the airport. Ali from CARB is going to go into a little bit more detail about what CARB has already done in terms of analysis at this site, as well as some next steps that we're going to be taking going forward. So with that, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you. So as Madison said, I'm Ali Adams with the California Air Resources Board, and I'll briefly cover a few issues and suggestions specific to the air monitoring site at the PM 2.5 Bakersfield Plans location. These slides summarize the information in Appendix C to the District Air Network Plan. That write-up in this presentation provide details about ongoing air quality monitoring challenges at the site. Both CARB and the district have noticed some issues with this site, some of which have been ongoing for years and some of which are new and still being evaluated. We want to address the challenges and lay out a proposed path forward for resolving those issues. Next slide, please. First, let's see, I think I'm missing a slide. There we go. Thank you. So first, some background on why air quality monitoring is important. Accurate and representative air quality monitoring data is critical because it helps identify, explain, and improve air quality and public health in the San Joaquin Valley. It also provides residents with reliable information about the air they breathe. If an air quality monitoring site is not providing accurate and representative data, there are real-world implications for residents as the site can't meaningfully contribute to our understanding of regional air quality and therefore an effective control strategy for sources of regional significance. So nor does the site provide reliable information about what most people in the region are breathing. CARB and the district want to ensure that all monitoring sites are providing high quality and useful data. Next slide, please. Air quality monitoring sites are set up and operated in accordance with federal requirements. These requirements are designated to ensure that the site will provide quality data. The Code of Federal Regulations, or CFR, and the EPA Quality Assurance Handbook for Air Pollution Measurement Systems provide clear criteria for how monitors should be established. Monitors are located to represent different spatial scales, namely microscale, middle, neighborhood, urban, and regional scale, in increasing order of size of the area represented. The CFR language on specific design criteria for PM 2.5 says that the required monitoring stations or sites must be sited to represent area-wide air quality. These monitoring stations will typically be at neighborhood or urban scale, meaning monitoring sites should be located appropriately to pick up data representative of neighborhood and community air quality. The CFR also states that to represent larger spatial scales, the monitor should not be placed near local minor sources. Activity from local minor sources should not be allowed to inappropriately impact the air quality data collected at a site. Particular matter sites should not be located in unpaved areas unless there is vegetative ground cover year-round, so the impact of windblown dust will be kept to a minimum. The CFR also describes that the monitor probe inlet, the place where ambient air enters the sampler, should be between 2 and 15 meters or 6 to 45 feet above the ground for measuring neighborhood or large spatial scales. A typical CARB or district PM 2.5 monitoring setup is elevated, often on top of a building, approximately 5 meters off the ground, and sheltered to protect the monitor from extreme weather conditions. The monitor located at Plans meets federal siting requirements. However, as we'll see on the next few slides, there are numerous issues with the site location and nearby sources. Next slide, please. The Plans monitoring site, which is located in southern Bakersfield on the grounds of the municipal airport, was established according to CFR and EPA siting requirements in 2000 and has been collecting PM 2.5 data since that time. The site is operated by CARB. When the site was originally established, it was meant to represent neighborhood or regional scale air quality conditions. In the 2 decades that CARB has operated, in the 2 decades that Plans has operated, CARB and the district have continually experienced challenges conducting PM 2.5 air quality monitoring at the site. The challenges, which are in many cases unique to the Plans site, includes issues with overall siting and vulnerability of the monitor to localized emission sources, as well as concerns about site security and reliability. A couple examples The monitor is placed on a pallet and powered by an extension cord. As just mentioned, the monitor probe inlet for neighborhood or large spatial scales should be between 2 and 15 meters above the ground, but the PLANS monitor is at the very low end of that range with an inlet height of about 2 meters. Inlet heights for all other sites in the valley are about 5 meters or higher. And the lower the inlet height, the less representative the monitor can be of regional air quality and the more vulnerable it is to local emission sources. The extension cord powering the monitor runs exposed along the ground and connects to an electrical outlet on a light pole on the public side of the airport property fence, which clearly poses additional security and reliability concerns. The monitor is located near an airport runway, a helicopter landing area, and a flight training and aircraft refueling facility. Helicopters taking off and landing can cause dust to be picked up from the ground and suspended in the air, affecting air quality data collected. The PLANS sampler is located near several large unpaved dirt areas, making the monitor subject to ground level dust coming from open space around the airport. These conditions make the PLANS site less than ideal for capturing air quality data that is representative of the air people are breathing in the region. The next slide illustrates some of these siting concerns. Next slide, please. This slide shows an aerial view of the Bakersfield Municipal Airport with the yellow pin in the center showing the location of the PLANS monitor. The emission sources are labeled in red, including large open areas of dirt and dust, runways and roads, a helicopter landing area, fueling station, high traffic areas, and the BEST aviation training facility. Next slide, please. This image clearly shows the monitor on its pallet with the dusty ground around, and you're able to see the helicopter activity nearby and the visible ring of dust approaching the monitor. Next slide, please. As mentioned, there have been longstanding issues at this site for years. In addition to the longstanding siting and security issues, CARB noticed some data issues beginning in 2021. Recent analysis of 2021 data seems to indicate that impacts from localized emission sources may have changed significantly in 2021, further reducing the site's ability to represent neighborhood air quality. Historically, PM2.5 data collected at PLANS tracked closely with data from other Bakersfield sites, otherwise known as Bakersfield Golden and Bakersfield, California. PLANS generally measured slightly higher PM2.5 levels, but all three sites trended closely, either upwards or downwards, indicating agreement between monitors across the region. We can see this correlation between the three sites in the figure on the left. However, as indicated in the figure on the right, the 2021 PLANS data were no longer trending as well with Golden and California as they had over the last 2 decades. Next slide, please. Appendix C of the district's air network plan includes CARB and the district's initial analysis of PM2.5 changes at the PLANS monitoring site, and we continue to evaluate data being collected at PLANS and nearby monitoring sites. And based on this analysis conducted so far, CARB and the district proposed that PLANS should no longer be classified as a neighborhood scale site suitable for collecting data to be used for comparison to the annual PM2.5 standard. Due to localized impacts and unique sources of emissions near the monitor, the site represents microscale air quality and should be classified accordingly and not considered comparable to the annual standard. As we move forward, we believe it is critical to have an open and transparent public process to continue to evaluate the PLANS monitor. Part of this public process should include finding a replacement monitoring site that measures air quality levels that people are breathing in the region and that can provide data which are accurate, representative of the community or neighborhood scale air quality conditions, and are appropriate for comparison to the PM 2.5 standards. This process would also involve US EPA for concurrence and approval of siting requirements of monitors, as well as any proposed relocations or changes to an existing monitor site. Bakersfield is a region of high air quality concern within the valley and should have air quality monitoring, which better serves the community and provides CARB, the district, and the public with reliable data. CARB and the district analysis summarized here and in the Air Network Plan Appendix C demonstrates the need and forms the foundation for successfully finding a more suitable site. Further study and community input are needed in future steps. And with that, I will hand the presentation back to Robert.
All right, thank you. So for that's the presentation, that's the slides that we wanted to share and the information. So to just cover some of the next steps and review of the public review process that we've got so far and going forward. Just a reminder, we did post the draft 2022 Air Monitoring Network Plan to the district webpage and sent email notice to the list subscribers on August 1st. That started the 30-day public review and comment period. But we are requesting comments on the draft document that's posted to the web by August 31st. And then, of course, today we have in between here, we're hosting this workshop just to discuss the contents of the network plan and the information that we shared today. So then we'll have the end of the comment period. And then after that, we anticipate submitting the final air monitoring network plan to EPA in September of this year. So we will have an opportunity right out following my comments here to discuss any questions that there might be from the attendees at the workshop here today. But you also have the option, of course, to submit written or telephone comments to the district with this contact information here. This is info for me. Again, I'm Robert Gillis, and here's the information that you can use to submit any comments that you would have or that you'd like to discuss between now and August 31st. So from here, and then just as a reminder at the bottom, here's the information to visit this website, this district website, to sign up for the district's Air Monitoring Network listserv. It's an email subscription list to continue to receive updates on the status of not only this year's Air Monitoring Network Plan, but each year when we go through this process. So at this point, we will take comments and questions.
All right, thank you, Robert and Madison and Allie for that overview. So we'll go ahead and take some time now to see if there are any comments or questions on the presentation today or on the network plan. Just a reminder you can also send in your comments or questions to webcast@valleyair.org email address. If you want to send in your comment there, we'll be able to view that here and read that for all the attendees to hear what that comment or question might be. So with that, we'll go ahead and see if there are any comments at this time.
First up for public comment is Veronica.
Hi, Veronica, go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Veronica Aguirre. I'm a resident of the community of Avenel, and I'd like to propose that they include a permanent monitor near the Avenel landfill to understand the impact of the source to the community.
All right, thank you, Veronica, for that comment. Much appreciated. And yeah, as we noted in the network plan, and if you read in the detail there, it describes the requirements of where monitoring, which different counties and MSAs require monitoring for different pollutants driven by population and air quality concentrations. And as those change over time, more monitoring could be required. So we'll keep that in mind as the network changes in the.
I do truly
Go ahead,
hope
go
that you do. Oh, I'm sorry. I do truly hope that you do because Avenel is one of the most. We are out here, and I noticed that you do not fairly represent Kings County. Avenel is near a huge landfill, and there has not been any studies to show the impact of what this is doing to the community. We have addressed this issue so many times, and it's very disappointing to see that small communities such as Avenel, even Kettleman City, are not represented in some of these types of programs. So it would be really good if they would include some of the small communities such as Avenel and Kettleman City when they consider where they're going to put things like this. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Veronica.
Next comment is from Genevieve.
Hello, this is Genevieve Amslam with the Central California Environmental Justice Network. I have a list of questions, so I will only hit the first couple so that I don't take up all the time, and perhaps you could come back to me. The first question I have, first comment I have is to second Veronica's request for a monitor in Avenal, as the guidance from EPA states that the monitors are used for 6 different types, to collect information on 6 different types of information. And your presentation in this plan focuses a lot on looking at general background ambient levels of air pollution, but there's other uses for these monitors, such as citing one to determine the impact of a significant source on air quality. And so I think one in Avenal to understand those impacts because of the near constant complaints that the Air District has received from Avenal residents on odor and health impacts warrants some more attention in a monitor in that community. But my question is, why was the Stockton monitor moved last year? I've noted that the old Hazleton site actually recorded the highest PM10 levels in the valley when you discount the exceptional events. And I'm wondering why it was moved from where it was to now a site with a lower CalEnviro screen score that is now what's upwind of that monitor is mainly residential, while the other one was more was in a different community that had more impacts, that more sources impacting local air quality. So that's my first question.
Thanks, Genevieve. And for that question, that the Stockton site is a CARB operated site, maybe Ali or others from the CARB team want to give a little bit of background on the need to move that site and the process.
Sure, I'll go ahead and answer that question. So the Stockton Hazleton site, we were actually kicked out of that property. The building and the location, they were expanding. So we were not able to stay there. That was, one of the issues. And so our monitoring and laboratory division, I believe, did reach out to the Stockton community, and there was a lot of back and forth about trying to find, a representative site that met, that we could quickly actually, continue having data for, and also meet all of the siting criteria that was listed as part of the presentation. I don't know like the overall details. I mean, I can get back to you on that, Genevieve, if you'd like. But I do know we did get kicked out of the site, and then we had to quickly find a new location.
Okay, thank you, Sylvia. I'm glad that you connected with local residents. Was this brought to the 617 steering committee in Stockton? Did they have an opportunity to weigh in on this?
I know that the community had an opportunity to weigh in on it. I don't know how it was brought to them.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think Sylvia and Genevieve, yes, there were a few meetings with the Stockton steering committee where this was discussed with them, and they were able to pull together a lot of their thoughts and ideas on different locations within Stockton the site could move to. And I know the CARB team did evaluate quite a bit of that, working with the steering committee in those meetings. taking all that feedback and considering all the different ideas that came up from that. So there was quite a bit of community involvement through that process.
Okay, thank you. That leads me to my second question. So my understanding, to determine attainment of the NAAQS, data is averaged over a 3-year period. How does moving a monitor affect those calculations?
Well, I can go ahead. It does affect the calculations because you're right. You have to have 3 complete years. And so in general, we'd like to, carve when we're moving a site, especially one of our sites, we really try to find something very, very close. And, if the opportunity arises, just for example, like in Stockton, we had to get out of there immediately. But if we have enough time where we're moving a site, we can do what we call parallel monitoring. And so we monitor at the existing site and monitor then at the new site and compare the data. And so then what we try to do, then we try to say, okay, well, they're comparable and we have a complete data stream. We have examples of that with like Fresno. It changed from Fresno First to Fresno, I can't think of the name, but it's changed, and it has happened numerous times. We want to have a continuous data stream because it's very important when you're looking at, is air quality improving, are the controls working, and things like that.
Thanks, Sylvia. So if it ends up not being comparable, is all the data thrown out or not incorporated into the analysis of attainment?
Yeah, I'm not sure what your so right now, as far as the Bakersfield plants, we're investigating whether there is a local source, that it's a microscale site. And so if it's a microscale site, then it's still there for the 24-hour, but it's not there for the annual. And so that's why we think it's super important to find a representative site, because we want to have, comparative to the annual standard, and we're looking for, a new site that would be better representative.
Okay, thanks, Sylvia. I have more questions, but I want to kick it back so I don't take up all the room.
All right, thank you, Genevieve.
Next, we have Jesus.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Jesus Alonso with Clean Water Action. Just building a little bit on this last question, could you explain a little bit more what would count as, if it's, when moving a monitor, if it's comparable? What would qualify it as comparable?
So if the values track the same and it's recording the same or similar concentrations, we try to compare to when things were acting a little bit different. I mean, what we would want is we'd want to work very near that area. There is we think there's a community, there's locations that would better be representative of what people are breathing. The district and CARB have been looking at why did these values change, as I mean, you saw a picture of the site, and then in the district's part of the presentation, they showed what a normal site looks like. It sits, in an enclosure, it sits on top of it, a nice facility. And so this site is, sitting on a pallet where, helicopters are regularly landing. And so we just want to move the site so that it better represents what people are breathing. And it can be, we'll have to look to see how the values compare if we move it.
Thanks, Sylvia. Just to add to that too, Jesus, just some thoughts here from the district side. Whenever there's been a site move from one place to another, like what happened in Stockton, Visalia, Fresno, potentially down here at Bakersfield plant. So the new location is usually pretty close to the original location. It's not moving clear across town. It's just like a mile away, perhaps. So it's still fairly close to the original spot, just getting it in a new spot for different reasons, or in the case of Bakersfield plants, trying to get it into a spot that's more representative of what the residents are experiencing in Bakersfield.
And thank you both for your responses. So then, if it's not comparable, so is the criteria for a new location that it has to be comparable, or that it has to be available, and then there's a different, I guess, methodology or steps if it's not comparable?
I mean, I think, we'll have to deal with those issues. I don't know exactly what the answer to that question is. I don't know if the district has the answer, or, we're also working with the federal government. So we're working with EPA. They're, our partners on this. So I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, just to add to that too. Oh, go ahead, Jesus. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, because what comes to mind is, I think several years back there was a monitor really close to the Arvin community, and then it was moved somewhere between Lamont and Arvin, and I believe that changed the results, and I guess I'm trying to get an understanding if that was considered moved to a comparable location, or if it went through a different process.
I mean, it was not the same data stream. And then the Arvin location, we were kicked out of the site. And so it was, in a farmland, and then we moved it to a school. And the district actually did a campaign around it where they measured ozone concentrations. We worked closely with EPA, understanding the limitations about where you can have a site, as security and those kind of things. We knew that area needed to be representative, and so we wanted to make sure we had a monitor there. John, I know that you were part of that process.
That's right. Yeah, and just to talk a bit about Bakersfield plants too, it is a unique situation where we know it's being directly impacted by activities at the airport, helicopter landing pad, aircraft refueling and idling, and different issues. And so because of that, we know the data there is not representative of what residents in that area of Bakersfield experience. And so the whole thought process and effort is to get it into a spot that is more representative, which we're just starting the analysis. Now we're looking at this closely, and a lot of questions I know, but we'll be working closely with EPA and getting community input on the process. But it is a really unique situation here because of the nearby impacts to the Bakersfield monitor.
Thank you. Those are all my questions for now. And thank you guys for your responses.
Next is Gustavo.
Hello, how's it going? Good afternoon. My name is Gustavo Aguirre Jr. With Central California Environmental Justice Network here in Bakersfield. First of all, thank you for explaining the process and letting us engage. One of my questions was, as we transition from like filter-based monitors to real-time monitors, what you guys have seen and have looked through, is the value of the data any better? Is it the same? Can we just clarify that?
I'll go ahead and make a comment on the continuous data. Of course, it's better. You're able to see that data, immediately. And so you can look at what was the air quality yesterday. You can look at what was the air quality in the most recent hours. And so as far as understanding your impact on air quality, the continuous monitoring is better. Filter-based data, it takes about 6 months before you actually see what it is. And sometimes you forget what happened on that day. Yesterday, you could look and go, oh, wow, this is what was going on yesterday. And I can see that the air quality, reflects that. When you get the filter-based monitoring, you're not always aware. But I think one of the other things that, bringing back, going and talking about Bakersfield plants is that, as the picture showed, it's on a pallet, it's very limited. And for us, that's kind of, a problem. We can't add any kind of special monitoring. Just recently we did add, I think there's a BAM, there's a continuous monitor now, but really, to fully understand what's going on in that region, it takes significant amount of instruments and stuff. And so, it just helps when you have a better site. But, I think, continuous data is better because of the fact that you can see what you're breathing, very close to when it actually happens.
Right on. And the value of it is, I think the value is that it's real time, right? But I want to say the quality is also the same, very similar as well. Like the real time monitors versus the previous filter based ones.
Yeah, because the real time monitors are actually also, they're called a federal equivalent method. And so they're called an FEM. And so it's basically that EPA has taken these and said, okay, these are can be used to compare to a standard. For many years, it was only the filter-based samples. So, the continuous monitoring has come a long way.
Right on, thank you. And as you speak about the South Bakersfield plans site, yeah, I definitely want to advocate to keep the monitor in the general location, right? There's a new, and I'm not sure, like as far as the data, the quality that has been collected, but in the last 2 years or a year and a half, there's been some intensive construction of a new high school and a middle school. And so if you're seeing maybe a lot of different like wacky data, that could be something that, to take into consideration. Is literally just south of that. But also looking potentially as for those schools as partnerships where the monitors could be. I mean, talk about security, talk about electricity, it's all there, right? And so I would advocate for someone at the air district to reach out to them if that hasn't been done. And then talking about monitor site location, I think it's very important to take into consideration like there's two concentrations where we're doing community air monitoring, right, where we want to look at the neighborhood scale information, but also point source monitoring, right, where we're going to the actual sources of industrial pollution, right? And I think looking over the map that I believe John was presenting earlier, someone else on where the existing monitors currently are. Out in West Kern County, similar to the western part of the San Joaquin Valley, there's a lot of underrepresentation of air monitoring. And I think a community like Lost Hills, who's surrounded by agriculture, is on the northern tip of the Bow Ridge oil field and has a community, when it's ag season, they have 5,000 people living there, right? And so I think a community like Lost Hills, I would definitely advocate for some kind of monitoring plans in the future, if not immediately. And I just definitely want to echo Veronica's comments earlier, the first speaker from Avenal. Again, I think in these communities that are, more rural and definitely surrounded by industrial pollution, there's so much value placing monitors out there that we're not capturing, and you guys as agencies are failing to capture. So I definitely want to advocate for placement monitors in those locations.
Thanks, Gustavo, for the comments.
Next is Cynthia.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Cynthia Pinto-Cabrera, policy assistant with the Central Valley Air Quality Coalition. And I just had a clarifying question per se. So you all noted the different issues with the current monitoring site and just recently stated that it doesn't depict what the community is like breathing. Just wondering how you all came to that conclusion, and I'm not sure if it was addressed already. I had some audio issues a little bit ago, but just wanted to see what methodology you all use to come to that conclusion, if community members were outreached by the nearby monitor that informed this decision? Just a little curious about that.
So I'm sorry, the community members were not outreached that were near the monitor. And so it was actually, you know, our staff. And so while this Bakersfield Plants monitor, over the years, it has been higher than there's 2 other monitors, you know, in the Bakersfield region. It's always been a little bit higher, but the values matched well. So when you looked at the same values, you know, on the same day, the values were consistent with each other. Bakersfield Plants was always a little bit higher, but they were, you know, consistently a little bit higher. So they matched well. And so what happened is beginning in 2021, my staff looked at the data and all of a sudden it didn't match well. The 2 Bakersfield, the other 2 sites would read really low, and then the plant site was very high. And so this correlation or this matching just wasn't happening anymore. And at the same time, you know, we brought it up to the district, and the district also noticed that something was going on. And so then we started to, you know, investigate what's going on. We had our monitoring and laboratory division reweigh the samples. We were thinking, is something going on with the sampler? And then we just started investigating, and we're continuing to investigate to see why it's higher. But it was something that we noticed just from when you look at data, you know, very regularly, you know, and in the valley, you know, and over years, you know, it was just something that we noticed.
Yeah, thank you. I think that definitely makes sense. Just wondering if there's anything else we can do to potentially keep that monitor there, if that's what community residents wanted. I know all of us here speaking tonight have definitely advocated that there's disproportionate levels of air pollution impacting certain communities. So, I mean, not getting into the technical side based on this presentation, that's what I think I'm seeing. But I think definitely consulting with the nearby community members to, you know, kind of get their side of if they feel like the same peak points of the data are days that they feel like sicker. But yeah, thank you for the clarification.
Right. Thank you.
Next, we have Genevieve.
Hi, thank you for this conversation. Yeah, for the Bakersfield Plans monitor, while we're on the topic, I've heard Air District and CARB representatives routinely say that it isn't representative of what residents are breathing. However, looking at the map of the Google Maps of where the monitor is, that airstrip is about 450 feet away from the closest residence. This airport is surrounded by neighborhoods and homes. And so I think if we're getting high readings, it actually may be representative of what those residents are breathing. So I just wanted to counter that claim that it's, you know, happening in a vacuum, because there are breathers really close by.
And let me just answer that just real quick, Genevieve, is that, you know, with the advent of the purple air monitors, there's purple air monitors, you know, all over the place. But I think one of the interesting things is there is a purple air monitor that is between the Plants monitor and where the residents live. And so that purple air monitor is more reflective of the regional air quality that we're seeing at these other 2 sites. And so that was part of the other piece where we're saying we're not sure if these values are associated with what people are breathing. And so we are trying to, you know, look at all of the available data, because we definitely want to make sure that the community is representative. And so, you know, we've just been doing a lot of work on this issue collectively, the district and CARB together. It is a CARB site.
Okay, I appreciate it. And would appreciate more public involvement in these conversations moving forward. And was that purple air monitor calibrated to its nearest regulatory grade monitor, or is it just a community purple air monitor that wasn't
It
calibrated?
was a community purple air monitor.
Okay. Okay, back to my questions. I was wondering if the Air District or CARB has analyzed any of the community air monitoring data coming out of the 617 communities to understand if the current regulatory monitors are located in the areas of maximum ambient air pollution concentration. For instance, the monitor in Southwest Fresno, I believe at Edison High School, has been consistently reading higher than the Fresno Garland monitor, which is where the regulatory grade monitor is. And so I was wondering if the agencies are incorporating our new understandings that we were developing in the 617 process to be reflected in this plan, because it's my understanding that these monitors need to be placed in the areas of maximum ambient concentration.
Yeah, thanks, Genevieve. I can comment on that. This is John. So we have been assessing that, definitely looking closely at the data from AB 617, the community networks. In our quarterly reports, we've been doing comparisons of the community data versus the nearby regulatory sites to get a feel for the difference between the two. So that has been in those reports, discussed with the steering committees. That's all the reports are publicly available, as well as our presentations if someone wants to go back to take a look at that. But the difference between the two, and so what we talked about in this workshop is the network plan, where we document the official regulatory network, where the sites are established to represent more regional air quality, ambient air quality, and not directly impacted by nearby sources of pollution. So that's the focus of this network plan for regulatory purposes. For AB 617, with all the siting criteria that we talked about for the regulatory network, where we need to be careful to not be too close to nearby sources of pollution, for AB 617, we don't have to do that, where we can place monitors right next to heavy industrial areas, near freeways, different sources of concern. So we expect to pick up concentrations that are higher because of those different activities that could impact the readings. And so we would expect there to be some difference between the data we collect in the community networks versus what we see in our regulatory network. So there will always be somewhat of a difference between the two, especially because of the siting conditions that we have to meet with regulatory versus community. So that's a good question. That's something we're aware of, and we are documenting in our reports that we're putting together.
Thanks, John. I think maybe we have a difference of opinion then, because I think the Edison High School is located in a neighborhood. There's not, any major source nearby. So I do think it represents it's indicative of what the neighborhood is breathing, and ambient air quality. And so it's not like we're putting it next in the middle of like the Kern River oil field. We're putting it perhaps at a high school surrounded by homes. And this site is reading higher than other sites. And the EPA guidance is to locate these monitors in areas of highest concentration. So I would advocate for a regulatory grade monitor that is used to understand compliance with the Clean Air Act in Southwest Fresno at Edison High School. So that's my ask there. And then I also just want to respond. I've heard this comment that our monitoring plan is designed to figure out background concentration levels, ambient levels of air pollution. But looking into the guidance, that's just one of 6 types of monitoring that should go into this plan. There's other types of monitoring, such as understanding the impact of significant sources on air quality, understanding where the most polluted areas are, and understanding air pollution's impact on welfare-based variables. So I think this plan can do more than just ambient background levels, and it can start to answer more questions, especially questions that the community has been asking for a long time. For instance, what's happening in Avenal, what's happening in Lost Hills. and looking at it, it looks like the Air District only has, or the Air District and CARB together only have one monitor that's designed to understand the impact of a significant source, and that's the one in Fresno Garland. So I think the agencies can definitely do more here and definitely respond to community concern more with this plan. I guess I'll end with my last question. I have some others, but I'll let it go. There was a VOC analysis done in the Morningstar neighborhood in Kern County around, I think, in May. And the analysis of that sample showed really high readings of SOX, SO2, I believe it was, and those levels were above chronic and acute reference exposure levels. And so I was wondering what the Air District is doing to better understand this issue in particular. I think, again, there's only one monitor that's monitoring for SOX, and that's in Fresno. And so I was wondering if there's any update on what the district's doing to understand this monitoring issue or this emission issue. Thank you.
Thanks, Sylvia. Yeah, just a few thoughts here on those last few comments and questions. I know the Morningstar analysis is ongoing. We've taken some samples, taken a look at those. I can't really say a whole lot about the results of all of that. I don't have all the details, but we can check up on that. And as far as the different types of monitoring sites across the valley, there is some variation as described in the network plan. Some sites are more background sites that more on the west side of the valley. We have a few of those operating. Some that are more upwind sites, upwind of an urban area, some that are right in the center of an urban area to capture maximum emissions. Some sites that are sited downwind of urban areas to capture flow of emissions coming off of the urban areas. So there is some variation across the valley. They're not all the same. There are some differences, but I hear your comments on the need and the want to get more monitoring sites out there across the valley. Any other?
Yeah, it's the for you just brought it up. I noticed that for the VOC monitoring, the PAMS monitoring, to capture the maximum precursor emissions for VOCs, which in my mind, maximum VOCs would be, ag land or oil and gas or something that we know is causing VOCs. And that monitor is placed in residential Clovis. So a little confused about that one as well. But we'll put these comments down in writing so that they can better be responded to. Thank you.
Any other comments? No. And checking the webcast email inbox, I don't see any comments or questions that came through there. So I think we'll go ahead and close the workshop for this afternoon. Thank you for attending, all of you who listened in, for all the comments, questions, the thoughtfulness. Appreciate you staying involved. Just as a reminder, if you want to comment on it, the deadline is August 31st. In a few weeks, please get that over. The contact information is in the workshop presentation. And appreciate your time this afternoon and for all the questions and comments. Have a great rest of your evening. Thank you.